Thank you, Betty. Platform colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today with the distinguished colleagues, and I welcome Colonel Wesley Martin, who has joined us from the other side of the Atlantic. Just about 10 days ago, I had the privilege of representing parliamentarians here who support the Iranian resistance in a conference in Paris, where the courageous Madame Mariam Rajavi was in the chair. Let me begin, first of all, by expressing my concerns about recent developments in Iraq. I'm angry and frustrated that as soon as we put behind us a dangerous episode regarding the arbitrary deadline that had been imposed for the 31st of December for the closure of Camp Ashraf, we've been confronted with yet a further dangerous provocation. It seems that Nouri al-Maliki is determined neither to recognise nor to leave intact the rights of the residents of Camp Ashraf. Yes, there was the 24 December Memorandum of Understanding, which some of us would say was at best minimalist and an overall inadequate document. But it does obligate Nouri al-Maliki's government to ensure that the residents of Camp Ashraf should be moved safely to Camp Liberty. Except we now know what Camp Liberty is, and I'm not going to go over it again. You've heard it described. It is tantamount, it is in effect intended to be, I'm quite sure, a concentration camp, and let's not consider it an alternative facility. In terms of area and facilities, it is totally inadequate. It is milady. It is outrageous. Nouri al-Maliki, in a recent interview with the Iranian regime's media, repeated the false accusation of the Iranian mullahs and declared that he has arrest warrants for 126 of the residents. This means that the Iranian regime has simply demanded that he arrest those who are in fact the entire leadership of Ashraf, and he is willing and happy to capitulate and implement this injustice. Depends on the Iranian mullahs to sustain his very dubious presidency in Iraq. Day by day, new signals demonstrate that he does not have the will to stand against the demands of the mullahs who rule Iran. The international community must now draw its own conclusions. There has been far too much equivocation from the international community. It will not obtain a positive result with Maliki towards resolving the Ashraf crisis unless the United Nations is capable of sending a non-equivocal message that they are prepared to act decisively. And if I can almost interrupt myself there, because it has only been touched on very gently, unless Mrs. Hillary Clinton makes the humane decision that she is obliged to make, many of us feel, unless she makes that, then the United Nations itself has no muscle and has no ability to act. Only if the United Nations can, from this, and Mrs. Clinton can, from this platform today, pick up that message and meet the respective obligations, can we have any hope that the people of Camp Ashraf will not suffer a great deal more. Let me concentrate on that point. Today we need and expect the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to tell Nouri al-Maliki in non-equivocal terms that he cannot use the pretext of Iraqi sovereignty to bully us, and he cannot imprison 3,400 defenceless asylum seekers. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has defined those rights clearly, those rights associated with the clearly declared status of Camp Ashraf residents. Nouri al-Maliki has no justification for trampling on their rights, stealing from them, preventing them from taking their legal assets, and for any other illegal action against them in the name of Iraqi sovereignty. It is Nouri al-Maliki, through his capitulation to the Iranian rulers, who demeans Iraqi sovereignty, not the residents of Camp Ashraf. So as many of my colleagues have clearly said, and we want this message to be heard loud and clear, we demand that the High Commissioner tells Maliki that the United Nations will tolerate no longer delays in carrying out the UNCHR process and ensuring that Camp Liberty, if it's going to be, must be adequate, must be safe for the residents of Camp Ashraf. The United Kingdom may not have sought to create this problem, but we have a share in the responsibility and cannot wash our hands of what has ensued from our intervention in Iraq. There was an offer made on Friday week in Paris, and General Phillips said, I am willing to go and work in Camp Ashraf to identify these people and to ensure that we know exactly who we're dealing with. If the United Nations or if Mrs. Clinton gives the sanction, I am willing to go. And on behalf of myself and on behalf of one or two of my colleagues, the younger ones here, I said, and I will go with you, General Phillips. There are enough of us. There are enough of us, Madam Chairman, in this Parliament and in other parliaments and amongst very senior military people in the United States. As a mere major, I of course feel totally inadequate here today. but the reality is that we do have an obligation. I would contend that all governments who are part of the United Nations have an obligation, and more than any, my government, the United Kingdom's government, has a major obligation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.